Welcome, my name is Stephen Borg from Northwest Cadence, and I want to talk about the smallest possible implementation of Lab Manager to just test out your installation process. First, what do we have? We're going to have System Center Virtual Machine Manager installed. That's a prerequisite. You've got Hyper-V host, some library shares, and at least one machine template that you've created. In our case, it'll be a web server, so it needs IIS on it. We also need a TFS server, including a build controller and an agent, and a test controller and an agent. Finally, a file share where you have deployed an already built and compiled website. In our case, we're going to use a very, very simple HTML page. Now, we've also got two things on the client side, Test Pro and Visual Studio. Now we're going to use Test Pro to interact with System Center Virtual Machine Manager in order to create a web server. So that's how we'll create our environment, which we'll use. We'll then move to Visual Studio and run a build, which will, through the compilation process, etc., run this file share and deploy it to this web server. Again, this is the simplest possible thing that we can do in order to get a test of our infrastructure. And that's all our goal is today, is just test out our infrastructure. Is everything installed and communicating right? Okay, let's take a look at how we might do this. I've got a test case here, Lab Manager deployment to IIS test. Again, this is the simplest thing, and we'll notice that we have a very few number of steps here. Verify that it's ready. Some of these things, because they happen to be in MTM, are things that we'll need to do right now first before we can really start, running the test. So we're going to jump into Lab Center, and notice we have Demo 1 environment. This is the demo that we're going to deploy to. It's got an SCVMM name, so it's testing out our SCVMM piece. Just to demonstrate how we got there, you can go in and create a new environment. We'll call this one simply Demo 2, and it's an SCVMM environment. And we can specify the template that it comes from and click Verify. Now this is simply going to run and verify that we can create this template. And then if you look on the right hand of the screen, you'll see it's actually deploying it, installing components, customizing the virtual machine, creating the virtual machine, starting to it, connecting it, and configuring the test agent. That actually takes a bit of time. In it goes. Let's go back to the testing center and run our tests again. We're going to simply run this test. Now, do you need a test to validate? Absolutely not. But I like running it in the context of a test because then at some point we can come back and say, hey, this is, we ran it, we validated it. Now I'm going to pass these first few things that we did already automatically. Then let's open up IE and go to the website that we're going to deploy to. Notice it says test V8 in that hyperlink text at the bottom. We're going to pass all of these, and then we're going to go make a change to the drop location. Remember, our automated build is simply going to grab something from a drop location and deploy it. This is our most trivial deployment. So let's edit what's in there, this IIS start.html page, with just test.v9. We're just going to make a very simple change. At that point, we can again pass this and open up the start page. And we made the change. We can open up Visual Studio. In just a moment, we'll open up Visual Studio, and we're going ahead and running the build that's going to do the deployment. Now I'm going to trigger the build here right off. So immediately we'll trigger a new build, and that build will then start running in the background. We're going to run it with just our standard deployment. As it's running, however, let's go back and take a look at how that build is actually executing. So let's drag back over, and we're waiting for the build to run. Just started. So let's open up the base demo test and edit that build definition. Couple things just to walk through. As we go into the process template, this is the key area for a lab settings build. We're going to open up those lab settings and look at what we're doing. Now we're going to deploy to the Demo 1 environment. You could deploy now to Demo 2 if we needed to. For this example, we're simply going to deploy to Demo 1 because that's what we opened up at the beginning. Now we can use a Team Foundation build. We can specify .blogengine.net build or some other build, and we can select an exact build. Or we can simply point to a specified location, which is what we're going to do. Now the deployment itself, we're going to deploy to anything called web server using this copy command. And lastly, we can go in and run some tests in these environments if we so choose to. We can pick our test runs that we want to run. In our case, simplest possible build to validate the infrastructure, so we're not going to do that. All right, that's the build itself. Now we can go take a look at the build, make sure that it passed, and it looks like that, yes, indeed, it did pass. It took 40 seconds, which is less than the 60 seconds we wanted it to take. And we're going to open up IE, hit refresh, and note that now we are at test V9, meaning it successfully ran and deployed. At this point, we've now completed and we've validated that our infrastructure is indeed correct. And thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Northwest Cadence. You can reach us at clientservices@nwcadence.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook and visit our blog. Have a wonderful day.